So let's kick things off with Scott.
Oh, great. So I've been tasked with, I know everybody's going to kind of divide things up and talk about different pieces of the holiday spirit that get run by government, but I've been tasked with talking about taxes and tolls, gas taxes and tolls, which are sometimes an unconsidered element of your holiday costs. So I can tell you how much money states bring in taxes and tolls, and we'll get to that, but it doesn't really matter because examples tend to matter best. So I have a visual aid, which I haven't constructed a visual aid since I was in 3rd grade. I have one today, and tax foundation doesn't have a graphics department per se, so you're stuck with I actually put borders on it. You should be really pleased with how good this all looks. For Thanksgiving, I'm going up to New Jersey with my family, and we do this every year. And as I've gotten older, we've increased the number of cars that we've taken to New Jersey because nobody wants to spend 5 hours in the car with certain sects of the economy, of the family, excuse me. So, because I'll be talking about the economy, of course. So the cars will be, me and my girlfriend in one car, my brother, my sister and her boyfriend in another car, and my parents in the third one with my brother, who's not bringing his girlfriend, and whatever. So I drew up all the taxes and tolls that we're going to be subject to as we go up to northern New Jersey. If you know anything about that drive, it's probably like the most tolled drive in the entire country. So I called my dad this morning and I was like, Dad, what are all the tolls that you go on? No joke, he rattled off every damn one of these. And I double checked him and he was correct. Every single one of these tolls, he even knew which ones were northbound and which ones were southbound only. So I put them all up here, and the biggest ones are the JFK Memorial Highway, which is only northbound, and then the Jersey Turnpike, you get that northbound and southbound. But if you add all these on, and then there's this one is actually 2 different toll booths and barriers that are $1.50 a piece, and I broke it up. It's $25 when I'm going northbound, and then it's another $21.85 when I'm going southbound. So that's $46 per car, which is pretty sizable and something that I hadn't really truly considered. I knew there was tolls, but it didn't occur to me that it's like $46 when I'm making that decision. So if you multiply that by 3, because there's 3 cars, my family has a pretty big burden. But that's not all. You additionally have gas taxes. We're probably going to fill up in Virginia. So there's the state excise tax of 14.8 cents per gallon. This is actually computed in a kind of weird way. It's based on a floating average of gas prices across the state for the last half year. I'll get into that in just a second. But then there's other state taxes and fees that amount to another 2.5%, or rather another 2.5 cents, because there's a 0.6 cent per gallon petroleum storage tank fee in Virginia. And then there's a 2.1% sales tax on wholesale motor fuels, but that's only if you're in Northern Virginia or in the Hampton Roads area, but we'll be paying that, so I included that in there as well. And then, of course, there's a federal excise tax of 18.4 cents per gallon. So your total taxes per gallon in Virginia are 35.7 cents. And that's kind of in the middle as far as different states go. It's not really super high, it's not really super low. So then what I did is I looked at the different cars we got. I'm going to be driving a Chevy Impala that gets about 29 miles per gallon on the highway, and then my sister's going to be in the Cherokee that's 19 miles per gallon on the highway. That's pretty bad. And then my mom has a Highlander that's a hybrid but still gets worse miles per gallon than mine on the highway because it's kind of a bigger car. So in total, there's 500 miles, and I multiply that by the taxes per gallon for each of these, and it's another $25 for my whole family to drive round trips in Northern Jersey. So when you add that all up, my family's going to pay $165 in taxes and tolls just for Thanksgiving. I think that's pretty sizable. But that's more than Thanksgiving dinner, I think, or at least our contributions to Thanksgiving dinner. So that should surprise you, but the thing that should surprise you more is that I'm actually kind of okay with this. I actually think gas taxes and tolls. Yeah, exactly. Bear with me for a second. But I think that gas taxes and tolls are some of the better levies that the government can have. And there's a historical reason for this. They're kind of historically the traditional mechanism for collecting for transportation. Libertarians sometimes have a love-hate relationship with roads generally, and sometimes we disagree with each other. I tend to fall in the camp of, well, you know, government's probably going to provide roads anyway. They're probably going to have a monopoly against other people providing roads. If they're going to do it, they should do it in a way that's based on user fees as much as is possible. And I feel even more strongly about this because in recent years, as states have failed to index their gas taxes to inflation, and people don't like raising taxes generally, they've instead leaned on not raising gas taxes, because everybody uses the price of gas as one of those hackneyed phrases that is, you know, a middle-class burden that we should just totally avoid. Instead of raising gas taxes to pay for transportation, they just raise other taxes. They raise income taxes. They raise sales taxes. One of the big examples this year was in Virginia, where the Republican governor Bob McDonnell ran through a transportation package that increases the sales tax from 5% to 6% in Northern Virginia, and 5% to 5.3% everywhere else in the state. They also hike taxes in public roads. They actually banned tolling south of Richmond, which there's a guy that really loves markets, right? He actually bans tolling south of Richmond. And then they also fiddled with the gas excise tax for no apparent reason. I can't exactly figure out what the deal was here. It used to be about 17.5 cents per gallon, a standard cent per gallon tax. And then they moved it to this weird floating rate that's based on the price of gasoline in the last half year. It didn't really make a lot of sense. The tax will kind of grow as the price levels go up. It's kind of an inflation index, but it's not really an inflation index the way you want to index it. It's actually only indexed to the price of gasoline, which could have fluctuations that are in no way correlated to the rest of the economy because it's a small sector of the economy. So it did make a lot of sense, and I think that generally we should be a little bit more open to raising taxes on gasoline and tolls, and leaning on those a little bit more, as opposed to raising broad-based taxes, which in fact everyone, including non-drivers, pay. So I think the moral I get out of this, and I'm surprised that I'm leading us off, is that paying for stuff you use is kind of a bummer, but we don't really have a better system quite yet. So she talked about transportation, so then I'll actually answer your question.
Yeah, you're
Because I do have one. She's going to talk about mine, I'll talk about hers. Especially with nuisance taxes, like taxes on candy, soda, especially like the cutting grounds taxes on soda, they know that the thing that's attractive to legislators is not actually helping obesity. They use that as a front. And even in the best cases, I can give the example from soda taxes because I've read all those. There was like 14 bills in 2011, and they were similar in that in the best case scenario, only half of that revenue went towards actual obesity type of campaigns. And then they would like kind of budget on the other half and say this goes towards education generally. Well, education generally is like over a quarter of states' budgets. I mean, or sometimes close to half of states' budgets. Like that is totally a fungible item. So they raise these taxes, but it's never. You don't have to look very far to say, okay, it's not like a user fee on a sin tax where you're taking money for a specific purpose and then giving it back to the people that you took it from.
And that's why it's so convenient too, because a lot, especially now with these sugar taxes, fat taxes, such as what they are, it exploits this social concern about obesity, about healthcare writ large, to further their own ends. And it's the same thing with TSA too. It's why we have TSA apparatus that's so completely overblown, is that you could exploit the concerns about security to no end. No one ever wants to be that guy who's anti-security, and that's why we have a government behemoth that we don't know how to rein in now.
Isn't the basic problem here that government doesn't want anyone to have any fun?
Yeah.
I can tack on actually my appraisal is that argument of correcting for externalities has already been laid to waste, and I think was successfully done so in the 90s by Kip Viscusi, is one of the great economists who's done a lot of work on this, but then also very, very lefty Jane Gravel has done a lot of work on externalities in cigarettes, and finding that, you mentioned secondhand smoke as one of the externalities of cigarettes. That's not even the really, really big ticket item. It's the fact that we have a social, we have many portions of the healthcare system those costs are socialized through Medicare, Medicaid, etc. When people smoke, they tend to get sick more often, and the idea is that they utilize more Medicare or Medicaid expenses, and that is a shared cost or an externality. It's not created by the market, but it is still an externality. Kip Viscusi ran the numbers in 1994, and he found that actually people that smoke, they do get sick more often, but they also die earlier. So while they draw a little bit more heavily on Medicare and Medicaid than standard people do, they draw a lot less on Social Security because they never live long enough to collect it. So the externality argument, even though that's a really his own words are, this is a very ghoulish article, but that's already been totally busted in even Chamber of Health.
I was on CNN Crossfire like a decade ago, and this issue came up, and I pointed this out, that the academic research shows actually that smoking doesn't impose a cost on other people on that because they die younger.
Yeah.
They all started laughing and thought this is, just a big joke, and I thought, no, and so this is how seriously people treat economists.
Depending on the discount rate that you use, he comes up with the figure that you might even be better off subsidizing cigarettes about 30 cents. we could save Social Security if we just subsidize.
So cigarettes for everyone on the table.
I've seen that, Scott, but I never bring that up with legislators or press because it's so morbid. And they think you're psycho when you say that.
That's an off the record.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Scott, you talked a lot about taxes and tolls. I'm wondering what you think about the fact that a lot of the more efficient taxes like tolls and vehicle miles traveled are less popular than gas taxes and things like that.
It depends on the polls.
Okay.
So I've seen recent polls that say that we're okay with tolls, and it depends on how it's worded. If you say, would you rather your income tax go up or you pay more in tolls, people say, okay, well, I like tolls more. If they're presented with that sort of choice. But I've also seen polls where they say gas taxes is the most hated tax of all. So I don't know. I think that the first thing that we can do is start to talk about them as viable alternatives, and one of the things that is a good tax. There's maybe like 3 taxes that I would call good taxes. It's tolls, which are really user fee, and it's gas taxes to some extent. If we can fix them a little bit more, and then even though there's problems with the property tax, I tend to like property taxes over all these other really bad taxes that are really bad for economic growth. So I think education is the first step.
What about EMTs?
Oh yeah, sorry, vehicle miles traveled. Yeah, those are a little bit scary, aren't they? And people tend to think that they're really kind of scary. I was hoping Mark Scribner would be here so we could have him talk about how vehicle mile travel taxes are really awesome and like the way of the future. And there's got to be some way that we can. They really are very close to it.
But it depends who runs it. If the government's running it,
Exactly.
it's very scary. Because then the government has this massive database about everyone's movement in their car. The private
Though they probably
companies
already have that, but yeah.
I would say, but taxes. I mean, as a libertarian, I like taxes that are hated by the public. So that's why property taxes are good, because people hate them, and so they will resist expansion in government. So if gas taxes are hated too, well, that's a good thing. So people can feel the pain of big government. That's what we want. The worst type of tax are taxes that are invisible, and like the ones that come off your from withholding from your income, the payroll taxes, half of which you don't see. Those are bad taxes because they're not hated and not paid.